this module, we will be discussing the physical installation and wiring of Automate VX. Automate VX can adjust camera feeds in one of two ways, either through a physical SDI cable connection or through a network NDI video connection as well. The Automate VX standard system has 3 SDI inputs, while the Automate VX Pro system has 7 SDI inputs. Automate VX is capable of ingesting up to 12 NDI camera feeds and can output video in 3 separate ways: SDI, NDI, or a virtual output is available as well. Any combination of the 3 video output types can be used simultaneously. The DisplayPort outputs on the back of the system cannot be used for program output. These ports are only used for accessing the desktop of the Automate VX system for configuration and support. Automate VX must be connected to your AV network in order to operate. The VX system should be on the same subnet as the cameras, microphones, DSP, and control processor for your room. It is recommended that the Automate VX should not be connected to the internet and should be kept on a local AV network separate from the corporate network. The system ships with 2 NICs. NIC 1 ships with a static IP address of 10.1.10.2, and NIC 2 is set for DHCP by default. Hello and welcome to the CTI One Beyond Automate VX Implementation Training module. In this module, we will be discussing the initial software configurations of Automate VX. After the hardware is installed, we are ready to access the Automate VX system and begin configuring the software. There are several methods that can be used to access the Automate VX system. The first method is to connect a monitor, keyboard, and mouse to the Automate VX unit in order to access the desktop. The second method is to use a remote desktop protocol to access the desktop from a different laptop or computer that is on the same network. For this example, we're going to use remote desktop protocol. We will start by putting our machine on the same subnet as the default static address of the Automate VX, which is 10.1.10.2. I have set my machine to have a static address of 10.1.10.99 so that it is in the same subnet as the Automate VX. Now, we can open up a remote desktop connection to the Automate VX system. You will need to provide the Windows username and password for the Automate VX system. All systems have the same username and password by default. The username is valued_customer, and the password is One Beyond. Automate VX runs on a custom version of Windows IoT. It is important to note that although Automate VX is running Windows, it is not a personal computer. It is an appliance and should be treated as such. There are 2 applications that must be running at all times for the system to function properly. The first application is the Automate VX software. By default, the software is minimized. The second piece of software that must be running is Wirecast. Wirecast is a video production software that handles the inputs and outputs of videos flowing through the system. The Automate VX software controls Wirecast in order to make camera decisions. On the desktop of the system, you'll find some helpful applications such as the Camera Manager and some other various software for accessing peripherals. You'll also find a folder that contains helpful manuals and guides. Automate VX must be on the same subnet as your cameras, microphones, DSP, and control processor. You can change the IP settings of the Automate VX using the Windows settings. NICs 1 and 2 can be configured for static address or DHCP, although only one network connection is required for normal operation. Make sure that your Automate VX system has an IP address that is within the same subnet as the rest of your devices. Once you have changed the IP settings on the Automate VX system, you may need to re-establish the remote desktop connection using the new settings. You will need to change the network settings on your machine to be on the same subnet as the Automate VX as well. Then, you'll be able to open the remote desktop connection again. Remember to use the correct username and password for Automate VX rather than your personal Windows user account. Hello and welcome to the CTI One Beyond Automate VX Implementation Training module. In this module, we'll cover how to deploy your intelligent video room design file. Let's start by copying over a 1BRD file to Automate VX. Then, we can open up a browser interface for the Automate VX by opening Google Chrome. This browser interface can be accessed from any machine on the same subnet as the VX. The default username for VX is admin, and the default password is OneBeyond. Once logged in, navigate to the settings by hitting the gear icon at the top right corner. Then, to the Room Design tool by hitting the pencil icon. Let's replace this file with our custom design. To do so, we'll hit the Upload Project File button on the left-hand side, and then select our file that we copied over to the desktop. It is important to make sure that your cameras are coming in on the correct SDI inputs. The numbering scheme of your cameras in your room design should match the SDI input that each camera corresponds to. For instance, Camera 2 and 3 at the front of the room in this example should be fed into SDI inputs 2 and 3 on the back of the VX system. In order to confirm this, we can look at Wirecast. The top half of Wirecast shows the program output of the system. This output can also be viewed on an external display by using the included SDI to HDMI converter on SDI port 8, or by looking at your self-view in the video conference. On the bottom half of the screen, you'll see several shots labeled A-Cam1 through A-Cam7, and these shots contain the SDI feeds for the system. A-Cam1 contains the video feed from the SDI input 1. A-Cam2 contains the feed from SDI input 2, and so on. You can use the Camera Manager software to wiggle each camera and confirm that it is coming in on the right input. When I move camera 1, the shot labeled A-Cam1 in Wirecast moves as well. If you are using NDI to send the feed from your cameras to the Automate VX system, you will need to add each NDI stream to the corresponding shot in Wirecast. Click on each shot and add the appropriate NDI stream by hitting the plus button and navigating to the Network tab. Any NDI streams present on your network will appear here. You can simply select the stream and hit Add at the bottom. It is crucial that the measurements in your room design are accurate in order to ensure that Automate VX functions properly. If any of the measurements in your room design are inaccurate, it can lead to errors or mistakes in the software. Start by checking all of the cameras in your room to ensure that they are perfectly level both on the tilt and roll axis. Then, you can use the Set Origin tool in the Room Designer to pick an origin point in your room. All measurements are calculated in inches or millimeters if you're using metric. Click on the Set Origin under the Settings tab, then drag the red dot to the point on your floor plan that you'd like to measure from. When you select any of the devices on your room design, their position will be reported according to the origin point that you have set. Feel free to move this origin point around as needed while taking your measurements. For cameras, the Z value is measured from the floor to the center of the lens. Ensure that all of your virtual microphones have an appropriate Z value depending on whether that position is a seated position or a standing position. Next, you can enter the IP addresses of all of your devices. Remember to hit save when you are done. Now that you've double-checked your measurements and added IP addresses for all of your devices, you can use Room Designer to fine-tune the orientation and position of your cameras. First, you need to be able to view the output of the system. In this example, we've opened up the Room Designer and Wirecast side by side so that we can edit Room Designer and see the changes to the output in real time. In Room Designer, go to the View tab and turn on Live Mode. You'll see that in Wirecast, we've automatically switched to the grid view containing all of your camera feeds. Now, when you select any of the virtual mics in your room design, the cameras will follow. Once you've selected a virtual mic location, you can select each of the cameras and adjust the pan, tilt, and roll fields at the bottom right. Once you have selected a field, you can use the arrow keys to make fine adjustments. The goal is to adjust the cameras until both shots look the same. Once you've corrected for the orientation of the cameras, all positions in the room will be corrected and you're ready to move on to the next set of cameras. Once you've corrected the orientation and position of your cameras for one virtual mic location, the rest of the virtual mics to use those cameras as primary or secondary will be corrected as well. Now you can use the shot width slider to adjust how the shots look for each position in the room. Any virtual mic in your design can be designated as the chairman mic. This position will have priority over the other positions in the room. And when someone speaks from the chairman position, they will immediately be seen on camera. In order to designate a virtual mic as the chairman mic, select the virtual mic and toggle on the chairman mic parameter at the bottom of the menu. In order to speed up your workflow, you can select and edit multiple virtual mics at the same time. Select one virtual mic, then hold Shift and select the others you would like to edit. You can then change the primary and secondary camera options for all of the selected virtual mics, as well as the shot width. Blocking zones are used to avoid unnecessary camera switching caused by ambient noise sources in your room. To add a blocking zone to your design, select the microphone device. On the right-hand side, select Add Blocking Zone. Then you can click and drag the gray blocking zone to the area of the room that you'd like to ignore. For example, the doorway in a room or a loud equipment rack. Hello and welcome to the CTI One Beyond Automate VX Implementation Training module. In this module, we'll be discussing the homepage of Automate VX. The homepage of Automate VX offers full control over the software and the cameras from the main tab. You can toggle auto switch on and off, as well as enable or disable the video output of the system. If output is disabled, the system will output a black screen. From the Layouts tab, you can select between any of the user-generated layouts. The active layout is highlighted green. The Room Config tab allows you to select between any of the user-created room configurations. These can be used to accommodate multiple furniture configurations or divided combined states. The Cameras tab offers basic PTZ control, as well as the ability to switch between the cameras. If any of your cameras are intelligent cameras, such as the Auto Tracker, you can also start or stop the tracking. The Scenarios tab allows you to access any of the user-created scenarios. From this tab, you can also put the system to sleep or wake the system up. Putting the system to sleep will trigger a custom action as well as stopping the output and auto switch if it is enabled. Putting the system to sleep will also stop recording or streaming if those are enabled as well. Waking the system up will trigger a different custom action as well as start the output. In this module, we will be discussing the Settings menu of Automate VX. You can access the settings by hitting the gear icon at the top right of the home page. In order to access the settings, Auto Switch must be disabled. There are 4 tabs in the Settings menu. The General tab will allow you to access the output settings, where you can select multiple output formats as well as the resolution and frame rate. From here, you can add, remove or rename layouts, adjust recording settings, and select custom actions for wake, sleep, startup, and auto switch off. You will notice that by default, on wake, the cameras will point straight forward, and on sleep, the cameras will point straight back. These camera positions can be customized using scenarios. On startup, you can choose between wake or sleep. When auto switch is disabled, you can choose between no action or going to a custom scenario. Our push-to-talk and conversation mode settings can show multiple talkers at the same time, as well as the auto switch settings. Noise delay is the amount of time that a talker must be speaking in order for them to trigger a camera shot. Pause delay allows the talker to pause and then continue without switching to another camera shot, even if they are interrupted. Remember to hit Save at the bottom of the page after any settings changes. The titling menu allows users to enable or disable titling as well as select between 3 different types of titles. Static titling allows the user to write custom titles for each virtual mic. Dynamic titling will read titles on the fly from some discussion systems. Setup titling will display the active device and virtual mic and is useful for debugging. Again, remember to hit Save at the bottom of the page when you are done changing any settings. The Scenarios tab allows you to add, remove, and rename scenarios. The Advanced tab offers deeper control over the VX settings. From here, you can add or remove room configurations. Automate VX can trigger Shure and Telemix presets when switching between room configurations. To enable this, ensure that the checkbox is checked and add any devices that you would like to trigger presets into the list. Make sure to select the correct model and enter in the correct IP address. Below, you will find a field to enter in a destination for the Copy Files API. This is used for copying video recordings to new destinations, including external hard drives. You can also enable or disable any of the video production servers, such as Wirecast or Blackmagic ATEM, as well as export software logs for Crestron support to analyze. As always, make sure to hit Save Config when you are done adjusting any settings. In this module, we'll be discussing the Scenarios section of Automate VX. To create a new scenario, first, navigate to the Scenarios tab in the Settings. Then, click Add Scenario and give your new scenario a name. Make sure to hit Save Config when you're done. Next, open Wirecast and locate the shot with the same index as the scenario you just created. In this case, we will select the shot called Scenario 3. You may need to create a new shot and rename it using the plus button at the end of the shot list. Once you have selected the correct shot, use the plus button at the top left to add any sources that you would like to include. You can use any of the camera sources as well as custom graphics or any of the options that Wirecast has to offer. In this case, we will add an NDI camera feed. Once you have added a source to your shot, you can resize and reposition it however you would like. When you are done, make sure to save the Wirecast project. Navigate to the camera setup page in the VX interface page and select your new scenario from the drop-down menu. Next, you can select any or all cameras that you have added to your Wirecast shot and use the red button to add those cameras to your scenario. Then you can select each camera and use the PTZ controls to set up the shot. Once the shot is framed how you would like, hit the green Save PTZ Override button at the bottom. Remember to do this for each camera. Now that you have created your scenario, you can trigger the scenario from the home page. You will also be able to select the scenario for any of your wake, sleep, startup, or auto switch off actions. In this module, we'll go over backing up your Automate VX. Backing up your Automate VX configuration is easy to do. Simply navigate to the C drive on the Automate VX system desktop. Then, open the Program Files folder. Copy the entire One Beyond folder to a separate drive. This folder contains all the settings needed to back up your system. Room Designer files can also be exported from within the web interface to easily back up, copy, or edit your designs from a different device.